Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Roundtable. Our topic is truth. There's a big topic for us. Welcome everyone. It's good to
Hey,
see you guys. So, yes, before I share the magic slideshow, Brian, it's good to see you. You're in Vietnam with us today.
Vietnam, as usual.
Yeah,
Haven't left.
great to see you. And Jonathan,
Do.
good to see you. You're out in the San Francisco area, Northern California.
Uh, Still in Northern California, yes.
Yeah,
So
I see you've got your shades on, so you've got the cool California vibe for us today.
it is a beautiful day today so
Oh,
far, actually.
wonderful. Okay, let's go ahead and see if I can share my slides.
And Brian was saying the usual as if that was like the usual thing to be all like literally around the world. Like
Exactly. I'm making up for the
that's,
for the
that
bad
is
karma.
not usual, man.
It's normal for me. You know what I mean? This is my fifth country I've lived in now. So
It is a great idea, actually.
Well,
yeah.
Jonathan gave us a good idea. Today we're talking about truth. He said, what is the dictionary definition of truth? So we'll start here and then we'll look at our slides. According to dictionary.com, truth is the true or actual state of a matter, the conformity with fact or reality, a verified or indisputable fact, an obvious or accepted fact. And I guess that's where things can change. We've
Mhm.
accepted something as true and then discovered, oh, maybe that's not what's true. So
Hmm.
now let's see about our slides. Here we go. Okay, we'll go to present mode. So I was trying to come up with what image could we use to represent truth? And I went with a sunrise because we can all agree the sun rises in the east. There's a truth nobody can argue with. I think when we look for truths that nobody can argue with, it's a small number. But
Oh yeah.
this is one of them. The sun rises in the east. That hasn't changed as far as we know. Okay, here's some uh, prompts for our discussion today. As I was researching truth, and you'll find those research notes in the show description, courageous friends tell you the truth. So
Mm.
we kind of know a true friend when they say, you know, that dance move you do, it's kind of over. Or whatever. Friends will tell you the truth. Loved ones sometimes will tell you the truth. Strong leaders will tell you the truth. So whether they're leading you in the monastery or in the workplace or on the football team, strong leaders will say, you need more of this and less of that to help you achieve success. Teachers and instructors can tell you the truth. Practicing mindfulness can help you stop telling yourself a story that may not be true because you're just sitting and witnessing what's actually happening now without a story attached to it. The work of Byron Katie. She asked the question, is it true? And doing her worksheets can sometimes reveal truth. The Stoics, a lot of interest in the Stoics today about how to explore what is true. Scripture of all the world's religions, journaling can help us see the stories we're telling ourselves because now we read them back and say, I wonder why I'm thinking that way. Therapists and coaches, of course, also tell us the truth. Hopefully, the good ones do. All right, now we're with the memes. We'll have a little bit of fun and then we'll go into this discussion of what is true. Okay, to the left, a giant tidal wave. My to-do list, me. I've had this experience where it's like, I can't believe my to-do list is like a tidal wave. Okay, here's a dog carrying his own leash. When you realize that no help is coming, you're an adult and you have to motivate yourself to move forward. Well, I'll leave myself where I'm going then. I'll take my own leash. Okay, here's some e-cards. I've reached that age where my brain went from, you probably shouldn't say that, to, what the hell? Let's see what happens. So that might be a true friend who actually says the truth to someone. Okay, this is a famous Britney image. When the mirror tells you, if I had to rate my stress, I'd say I'm pretty close to 2007 Britney. So I think that's maximum stress. And then finally, I can't decide what pants to put on today, smarty or fancy. I think I put my smarty pants on today. All right. Sometimes telling ourselves the truth, looking in the mirror. Sometimes we hide the truth from ourselves because it's more than we can handle right now. But I really love that we're exploring this big, giant topic. And I turn it over to you, Brian. You have some thoughts on what is truth, the truth.
Yes, absolutely. So I generally always favor like a multidimensional approach to things, including with truth. So in Western culture, actually, I think in most cultures around the world today, there's kind of this bias towards logic, reasoning, argumentation being the method to find truth, right? Like you have to research, provide evidence, reason it out properly, and that's the way you can find truth. There's other sources of truth, there's other ways to truth, and there's also problems with that way. First of all, people's logic is not always sound. And honestly, most people have not even studied logic, although we all think that logic is very important, but no one really studies it very deeply, actually. Um, and actually, logical fallacies are an absolutely normal part of everyday conversation. People make logical fallacies all the time. I mean, probably myself included. But there's also a fundamental problem with logic. So, logic is basically if then statements. That's pretty much how it functions. Like, if this is true, then we could say that this is true. And if that's true, then we could say that this is true. Therefore, if the first thing is true, then we could say the third thing is true. That's basically the format that most logic is in. But the fundamental problem with that is, how do you know the first statement is true? Especially once you start getting into abstract topics, right? Especially when you get into philosophy and stuff like that. How do you know your first premise, your first assumption is true? Because you have to start reasoning from somewhere, right? You have to start with something. You can't just reason about nothing. You have to start with something. Well, how do you know your starting point is correct? And then everything else afterwards can be wrong if your starting point wasn't correct. So I'll try not to go too long, but we only have 3 people today, so I guess I can go a little bit longer.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. So Descartes, that was a big problem for the philosopher Rene Descartes. He was saying, so where do we even start with philosophy? I mean, where do we start? It's an infinite topic. Like, what is the first building block going to be of our reasoning? Where do we start? And that's like honestly a huge problem. Like, you don't really know where to start. I have some of my own ideas about that, but he started with I think, therefore I am. I don't think that was a good starting point, but it was like a breakthrough at the time. And he's still a very famous philosopher because of that. But the thing is, any reasoning you do has to start somewhere. The starting point can be wrong. The steps you take from one point to another can be wrong. So that can go wrong. So, although logic can be very helpful, but there's a lot of ways it can go wrong. So that's not going to work as the only source of truth. That's just not going to work, I think, in general. So I would encourage people to start using their feelings as a source of truth, but you have to hone that skill. You have to actively like hone it and then test to see if your feelings are becoming more accurate. So I'm not saying just always be swayed by every little emotion you have. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying hone your feelings like a Jedi. That's what I'm saying. Like where, Luke's flying the frickin', X-Wing and he's trying to shoot the missile into the tiny port in the Death Star, and then like Obi-Wan Kenobi like appears in his mind, and he's like, turn off the visor screen, just use the Force, search your feelings. I'm saying like that. Like if you hone your skill to like focus your feelings in on something to feel out whether it's true or false. If you keep doing that, you'll get better at it. Anything you practice, you'll get better at it. And then verify it, test to see if you were right, to get a sense of how accurate you are. And I think you will get more accurate over time the more you practice that, especially if you're sincere about it and you put some focus into it, like you're actually really doing it. I think it's important for people to use feelings as a source of truth in that way. Now, I believe it was last week I also mentioned muscle testing. I know you know about it. I don't know if Jonathan, if you're aware of this, but that is something you can do where you're testing how something feels in your body. You're testing if your body goes strong or goes weak in response to something. And this is a way to sort of see if your body thinks this is true or false, or if your body thinks this is good for you or not. So there's different ways to do this. I do it a bunch of different ways, that I kind of created, but like you can, if you think about something, try to press down these two fingers while you think about that statement. And if it's like hard to press, you'll actually feel sometimes it's really hard to press down. That means your body's going weak in response to that thought, or in response to that image, in response to that thing you're focusing on. So your body's getting a weak response. That's sort of indicating that's not really true for you. That's like not good for you. And sometimes you think about something and you can press really hard. You can just really, really press down. That's saying your body is strong in response to that stimulus. So this is a way to sort of test truth in your body. I think it's always good to test things from many different angles. Test it with your logic, test it with your feelings, test it with your body. And that's giving you ways to verify things. Like, is this really true for me? Especially like when you're testing in your feelings, testing your body, that's telling you if it's true for you, like on the individual level. With logic, it's more objective. You can maybe test things and maybe that are more true for everybody because like everyone can follow the logic. But so yeah, I would say that. And I think we also have this sort of aspect of the culture where some people favor logic to the point of like suppressing their feelings. Like, cold, hard logic. That's what's true. Feelings are just subjective BS. What I would say is if you're going with that, that's actually like a form of self-amputation. Like if you're cutting off your feelings, to me, that's no different than like cutting off your hand. Like you wouldn't want to go through life that way, right? You got to include your feelings. So another thing I do is like, if I reason something out and it seems correct, I always check how it feels because if something seems logically true, but it still feels bad, that's telling me it still doesn't work. Like that something needs to adjust because that's not going to work for you in your life. How's that going to work for you? If believing in that thing makes you feel bad, how's that going to work? Like if you carry that energy around with you daily, it's not going to work. Even if it seems right to the mind, if your heart is like not doing well with it, I mean, something has to shift. You have to reformulate that belief or that statement you were thinking of, or you have to put it in a new context. Something needs to adjust if your feelings don't feel right. I would say that. I would also say that dimensions of truth. There's different arenas. And I know I'm going on here, but thank you guys for listening. So, for example, you might study the Bible or study a spiritual book, and it says, if you give things away, it's good karma, right? That might be a spiritual truth. Now, that's not necessarily the mathematical truth. If you give things away and you now have less things, that's the mathematical truth. In a different dimension, it might be true that you're accumulating good karma. Maybe it has a positive effect on your aura when you're generous. You know what I mean? People
I think
might,
that it's a great example of exposing truth in that level of.
Mhm.
yes,
Mhm.
exactly. There's different dimensions, there's different arenas to truth. So it might be good karma. I'm open to that idea. But also mathematically, it means something different. If you gave away money, you now have less money.
Mhm.
That's mathematically true.
Mhm.
So the other thing I would say is there's different eras, there's different times of humanity where different truths are accepted or not accepted.
Mhm.
And you have to have the social skills to be able to work your way around speaking truths at those times.
Mhm.
There's certain eras of humanity, certain periods of history where you could not speak certain truths.
Mhm.
And there's other periods where you could speak those truths and it was socially accepted, but you have to have the social skills. Like in samurai times, if you disrespected someone, I mean, they'll just pull out a sword and just kill you. Like that was just normal. Like everyone expected that to happen.
Mhm.
You couldn't
The good,
say
the good
one,
old times.
yeah, the good old days, man. You couldn't make one highly disrespectful statement. I mean, people would just expect that guy would just try to kill you.
Mhm.
That was just known. Now people disrespect each other all the time, like, and no one really cares. So it's a completely different time. It's a completely different era. You have to know, like, I feel like this is a time where humanity is opening up to more spiritual truths, more things like psychic phenomenon, meditation, other stuff. I mean, who knows? Tarot, crystals,
Mhm.
Reiki healing, sound healing. Like people are a lot more open minded to that kind of stuff now. But 20 years ago, you were a complete nut job. You were completely crazy.
Mhm.
So you do have to have the social skills to work with the time, the era that you're in,
Mhm.
um, because different things are accepted at different times. Another thing that's very interesting is if you look at like Taoism in certain statements, I believe it was a Taoist statement. Um, there's a statement that says, those who know don't speak, and those who speak don't know.
Mhm.
I don't think that's true in all cases. Obviously, we have to speak sometimes, but the idea is there's certain truths that cannot be spoken. There's literally no way to explain it. It's just something you would have to feel in your consciousness. There's other truths that can be explained, like you can explain the counting system and 1 plus 1 is 2 and 2 plus 2 equals 4. That can be
Mhm.
explained to everyone. But there might be certain things you feel in meditation or in prayer or in other spiritual practices that you do where you just feel something shift and you know how it works. You just intuitively know how it works. But that's not something you could ever specifically describe or explain to someone else. They would simply have to go in and feel that thing shift inside themselves. Then they would know what that is.
Mhm.
So there are certain truths that cannot be spoken or explained. And that's one idea for why there's so much conflict between religions, because a religion is an attempt to explain these things,
Mhm.
but a lot of it cannot be spoken or explained.
Mhm.
You would just have to simply find it in your meditation,
Mhm.
in your heart, in your consciousness, in your prayer. Like you, it's just something you have to unlock on the inside. So those are the things I would say about different aspects of truth, different dimensions of truths.
Mhm.
I would like to turn it over to our esteemed, honored guests here and see what see what you guys would like to add to that.
Well, Jonathan, I'd love to have you chat about your explorations around truth. I know some of those were prompted by spiritual experience that you had happen. I've taught meditation for many years, and it's not uncommon where people begin to question truths they've long held and just took for granted is what everybody believes, so it must be true. And then their internal world is shifting and their outer world is looking different. And they get disrupted about, well, is the thing I was thinking and everyone else thinking, is it true or isn't it true? And how do I find out? You went on a journey of exploration around that.
Oh, definitely. Sometimes truth can be the most illogical thing you can ever think of or come up with. Um, um, which reminds me, Brian was talking about how some truths they cannot be explained. I actually agree. There are some truths that can only be recognized.
Mhm.
Um, so those you cannot explain, but you can recognize them, and your whole body and soul recognize them as a truth.
Mhm.
Um, Another interesting something peculiar about truth is that it is so crystal clear for everyone once you just pay attention, but it's so raw that most humans don't actually want to like look at it and like see everything like as it is. Like for example, I've noticed in the dating arena, a lot of what it is true in relationships, it's completely illogical. Like it has no,
Mhm.
like what will help you in, like, let's say dating as a man, it's completely different than, it's actually quite illogical, but it's truth, and your whole system recognizes
Mhm.
it as truth.
Mhm.
At the same time, um it's like com- a complete abstract idea, so that's actually interesting. Sometimes truth is like a slap in the face, but then
Mm.
it shakes you, but you will always recognize it. It's like there's like something. It's like the cells in our bodies, they recognize,
Mhm.
and they start like getting excited, and like they start like making like a rave or something all together. So that's pretty interesting. It's So yeah, I also agree that there's like different dimensions of truth. So it just depends. Like, what is the main one of the main things that I would recommend for someone to get to know themselves better, something practical. It can be, for example, what is my truth?
Mhm.
Like, and that's how it starts. It sounds like a simple question, but if you actually start going deeper, you're
Mhm.
going to find out that truth is sometimes truth is a lie. It's interesting.
Mhm. 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 Do you have an example of that?
I can think of one as we continue the conversation.
Yeah.
I can definitely come up with something. Yes.
I really appreciate your bringing up my truth because, we've seen over history, I use the Galileo example, that it was blasphemy for him to bring a scientific mind to church doctrine and to say that the earth revolves around the sun does not revolve around the earth. And that was contravening agreed upon religious doctrine within the Catholic Church. And then he was guilty of blasphemy. And so, talk about cemented in believed truths. Everybody believes it's true. And so, we can't disrupt anybody by saying, maybe that's not true. Um, you find this in marriages that come apart. You believe you're happily married, you believe your partner is satisfied, and then you discover that the partner is cheating on you. And now everything you believed isn't what you did not know the truth. It was your truth. You're happily married. Now it's not your truth. He's been cheating on you for 3 years, or she's been cheating on you for whatever. and you realize I was living a fantasy that wasn't true. But that the startling thing when you discover a new truth is that thing you've both described. Your whole body is in agreement. All of your system is like, I know in my bones, I know in my gut that was a lie. I believed it was true. And now I know it wasn't. When did it stop being true? It stopped being true 3 years ago when this thing happened, and then they've been carrying on ever since, or whatever the circumstances are. It's very jarring to have a lie be revealed and to discover a new truth. And we talk about, just the human psychology of how many new truths can we stand at once? How many Jenga blocks can you pull from my foundation before I just collapse in on myself? So part of the reason that we'll turn a blind eye to a new truth is because internally we are not ready to handle that truth yet. Like that movie where he's on the stand, he says, "You can't handle the truth." You know, I stand on the wall and protect you because you can't handle the truth. Well, sometimes it might take us a while to handle the truth, to come around to processing and integrating. I thought we were happily married, and now I know we're not. And what do I do with that truth now? This is my reality now. I think sometimes when we have spiritual awakening truths, they happen inside us. We don't always have words to describe, but it shifts the reality so hard we can't go back. Like we can't go step back into the old reality because we now for sure know in our bones that's not true. This is true. There's no not living with the new truth. And while that can be freeing, it can be awakening, it can also be disruptive because now, if you speak that truth to people who believe something else, you're disruptive, you're crazy. Well, you should just forgive him and move on. So you weren't happily married, but there is something to work with here. And while you're still coming to terms with my reality got fractured, I need a little while to put the pieces back together. Truth can be a dangerous thing. Sometimes, if you think about as we raise little kids, we tell them fairy tales about the Easter Bunny and about Santa. And some people are told they're biological children, and then at 18 told, well, you actually were adopted. The other ones after you are biological children. So there are some truths that are dangerous to reveal because of what it could do to the person. And there's some amount of discernment that has to happen. So that's one of the things I think we could talk about is the quality of discernment as we uncover new truths, as we repattern our lives around a truth we've uncovered. When I looked up discernment, like when we looked up truth just now, all of the definitions had to do with spiritual nature, discerning the truth in scripture, discerning the truth in some religious practice. Discernment is a spiritual quality according to the dictionary. So, and I think at bedrock, truth is part of how humans operate. There's a spiritual component. Brian talked about science and logic, and then the emotional qualities. There's a kind of a movement in the awakening community of heart and mind coherence. That if you can have the heart and mind working together, if you can create harmony between what you think and how you feel, now you're in a happy reality. And when one of those is out of whack, this feels good, but I think it's wrong. This seems right, but it feels wrong. Getting to that coherence, I think, is part of a path towards what the truth is for you. Yeah, more thoughts about that, Brian?
I got actually a perfect personal example of what I meant by
When the truth
sometimes
is
truth
a
is a
lie.
lie. Sometimes.
Wonderful. Yay.
So I have been doing this experiment for a couple of years now, when I just stargaze at the sun, pretty much, right?
Mhm.
Um, with my naked eyes, so for like a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's been a couple of years now, just personal experiment. And
Mhm.
then the truth is that if you look on Google and you ask what happens if you look at the sun directly with your eyes,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, you're going to be blind within like don't ever like you cannot do it like not even like 2 seconds. Like it's something crazy. So the truth that is actually exposed, in
Mhm.
my experience, it's a lie.
Mhm.
So I need to be older so that I can have like decades of experimentation so that I can actually be an authority on sun gazing. But yes, let's see how it goes. Hopefully, I can have some more decades under my belt in that arena.
Yes. Well, and there are disagreements, scientific disagreements. There's a
Yeah.
conversation in America right now about fluoride in the water. And
Yeah.
there are some people who say it's important and other people who say it's poison. And so the scientists are arguing. And it can be hard to arrive at some kind of truth when experts disagree. And sometimes I think you then have to rely on, as you say, Jonathan, your personal experience. You know,
Yes, because any
better.
science, yeah, any scientist that let's say they experiment with the sun and the eyes, and then they can do all these calculations. But I'm like, have you ever done it for like hours and hours? Well, then you cannot tell me my truth then. So
Yes,
it's
Yeah.
like interesting, you know?
yes, yes.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I've tried sun gazing before too. I never did it consistently though, but I know some people have done it and have gotten a lot of benefits.
Yeah, the benefits of it. Yes.
Mhm.
But again, for the viewers out there, so we don't have trouble with YouTube, I'm not recommending that. I
Yes.
don't.
We're not medical authorities.
No, no, I'm not advising to that. It's just a
Yeah,
personal, it's a
yeah,
risk that I'm taking actually. Because who else is going to do it? I'm sacrificing myself for humanity in that sense. Like,
You're being a
I know, dude.
sun-gazing guinea pig.
I know the feeling of that. Yes, I know that feeling. Like, who else is going to do it? Someone's got to test this. You
Well,
know?
we know in coaching that we bump up against limiting beliefs. We don't realize that we've painted these invisible lines for our behavior. We don't do this. We would never think to try that. And sometimes they're layered on us as in our growing up. Adults told us we believed it. Sometimes it's just through habit over the years. But I think when you inspire someone to try something new, they're bumped up against a limiting belief. What would happen if you smiled at everyone that you met today? Just a happy smile. And what would happen? Oh, people would think I'm crazy. I would feel crazy. Here's the reasons why that doesn't make sense for me to do. Well, let's see if we can break you out of that and see if, when you, in your experience, as you mentioned, Jonathan, you might find a new truth about that because you haven't tried it, you haven't done this experiment. It's not dangerous. Nobody will get hurt if you smile at them. And so you might try smiling at everybody for a day, see how it feels, what kind of responses you get, and then, decide if you have learned something new. So as we each grapple with truth as we understand it, sometimes our truth is narrowed by limiting beliefs that are kind of invisible to us. And when we have to try something new, we bump up against those. But it gives us an opportunity to expand in our experience what might be true for us. And that's where the growth happens, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about what something you mentioned a bit earlier, Mom, and that's adjusting to new truths.
Mhm.
I think that's a really big topic right now for humanity because personally, I think a lot of stuff's going to be coming out that
Mhm.
a lot of people aren't ready for.
Mhm.
And with the new administration, they're revealing a lot of stuff that's been going on,
Mhm.
that's been going on like fraud with taxpayer money and all kinds of stuff. And I also think there's going to be more disclosures coming out. I don't know if this is true, but
Mhm.
with technology they've had that they haven't disclosed to us and other things
Mhm.
of that nature, maybe even interactions with, ETs,
Mhm.
aliens and stuff like that. I think more of that's going to be coming out.
Mhm.
And yeah, so adjusting to new truths, right? So personally, I think people shouldn't be too heavily invested in their personality, in their lifestyle, in their current activities. I think it's better to always be ready to adjust and adapt and just enjoy wherever life takes you.
Mhm.
Because that way you can just surf. You can just surf the
Mhm.
freaking waves of your life. You
Mhm.
can just surf it that way. Like, um, whenever you're like rigid and you're clinging to old ways, it's a very insecure position because if anything changes, you're disrupted. You're thrown off.
Mhm.
And what if a lot of stuff changes?
Mhm.
Well, good luck. You know what I mean? So
Well,
it's
there
like
are ways to manage the disruption, right?
I
There
agree. I
are
agree. But I'm
ways.
saying,
Mhm.
like just taking that attitude, you're ready to enjoy new things. You're
Mhm.
ready to be with life in whatever new forms
Mhm.
comes at you in. You're just ready to experience that.
Mhm.
Will really help you adjust to new truths. And I think that's going to be a big theme
Mhm.
for the next few years.
Mhm. Jonathan, how about you? You invite people to learn some truths about how their subconscious works, that there are tools that they can use to shift how things, their experience of daily life is. And how do you help them see the truth of that when they didn't know it before they worked with you?
Well, the beauty of it is that I don't have to do much, because the client knows exactly what needs to be done once it's under induction, right? Um, the Something that I wanted to mention. Um, uh, we have the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So, but the something extremely important is that the subconscious mind does not know the difference between something that is not true or like an actual truth.
Yes.
So whatever you fit your subconscious mind
Yeah.
is just going to multiply times like billions of cells and
Mm.
is going to accept that as truth.
Yes.
So when I have noticed with clients, let's say they want to change something, but their whole truth is like their whole mind thinks this is not possible. This is
Yes.
not possible, not possible, not possible.
Mm.
Now
Mhm.
we actually, what we do is we take a dive into the subconscious mind.
Mm.
And then with light and truth, we do some alchemy there, right? So
Yes.
we some magic,
Mhm.
which is a lot of clients' work,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's pretty simple.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, it is extremely important to understand that most of the things that we think of on regular, like we have over 60,000 thoughts during the day, let's say.
Mhm.
So if we have 60,000 thoughts a day, that means that by definition, on a normal human being, at least out of those 60,000 thoughts, let's say 50,000 are going to be negative.
Mhm.
Just like pure math, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's a lot of negative thoughts on a regular
Mhm.
like human being. So once you become conscious of that truth, that you can actually switch your state in like a second.
Mhm.
Once you get access, let's say, for example, to one of my techniques, which is an anchoring, right?
Mhm.
So once you remember that you have control, let's say somebody's having, for example, a ADHD something
Mhm.
attack because they are like anxious or something, right? With this anchor that we have done previously, they can get out of that state in like literally,
Mhm.
okay, 3 seconds, not one
Mhm.
second, because they have to inhale. So let's do
Yes,
three
the
seconds.
time it takes for our breath. Mhm.
um, so, and the truth is that the whole reality changes because we are just pure energy. We think we are solid, but we're vibrating at
Mhm.
such a high speed
Mhm.
that most humans forget about the truth, which is we are just like some kind of like energy floating around with like a cocoon of flesh.
Mhm.
But those are the truths that we don't wake up usually thinking, oh yeah, uh, I am like I am
Yeah.
not this. It's
Yeah.
people wake up, we brush our teeth, and like we don't think about like the real truths of like the simplicity of
Mhm.
life, and then we complicate the whole structure, and then that's how you end up with societies that have all this kind of like pathetic disease, like mental diseases, because they're so easy to eradicate if you just pay attention, which is something that I can definitely help someone that really wants to get rid of anything like that.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of they reaching out.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we'll definitely make sure they know how to get a hold of you and Brian at the end of our program here. The last thing I wanted to mention is I was talking to clients this week. Some of them are thrilled with the new administration and the changes that are coming. Some are horrified about the new administration and the changes that are coming. And so, everyone's mileage may vary about how they're responding to the circumstances that seem to be unfolding. And what seems to work best for my clients is to take their eyes off of what's happening in Brussels or in Paris or in Washington, in Mexico City, wherever your worries are, and bring them right back down to your life right now. And is what they're doing going to change your tomorrow? Change anything for you at noon? Come back to the world that you operate in, the small world of you, and then look at what you control, what you can make changes of, because you're sort of renting space in some of those 60,000 thoughts about things you have no control over and may not understand the whole dynamic of. And you don't have to pollute your life that way. You can be happy in any administration. You can be happy whatever the external circumstances are, but bring your life down to your life, what you have control over. Make a cup of tea, call a friend. You can have a fulfilling life, whatever's going on around you. And so if you have a very specific concern, reach out and get help, from Jonathan, from Brian, from me, from coaches that and you can get a shift in that. If you have had a difficult truth revealed to you that you're trying to integrate and navigate around, there's help for that too. We've all been there. We've all had these, oh my goodness, I thought it was this way. It's this way. Huh. What does that mean for me? What do I do now? That's part of being human, part of being, going through growth cycles, different seasons of your life. So I don't know. Any final thoughts, Brian? And be sure to tell us how to get a hold of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you make some good points, and I'm still kind of thinking about the whole adjusting to new truths thing. Because I want to have some messages out there for people as that stuff unfolds.
Yes.
Um, what I would say is a lot of people when they go through a sort of spiritual awakening, and I mean there's many levels to that, but when people go through like an initial one, a lot of times they kind of become apathetic
Hmm.
after that. Like they feel like their job is pointless or society is pointless or,
Mhm.
all that matters is meditating or improving your consciousness or like,
Mhm.
so if you go through something like that, I would say just remember you can make meaning out of everything. Everything has meaning and you can make meaning out of it. Anything you're doing, like Jonathan says, if you pay really close attention to it, it will become very meaningful.
Yes.
I would say every aspect of existence, if you pay really close attention, is very meaningful.
Mhm.
So that can take you out of that kind of that apathy that sometimes happens when people have a spiritual awakening or when they realize there's been a ton of corruption and fraud in society and
Mhm.
all the stuff we believed in, all these institutions, the government we believed in wasn't really doing what they were supposed to be doing. If people go through that, just remember everything in your life can be meaningful. Pay attention to it, soak it in. Like gazing at the sun can be very meaningful. Going for a walk, like
Mhm.
spending time with your dog, like, having a cup of tea, like you mentioned, like
Mhm.
pay closer attention to it, and every moment will be spiritual in a certain way. Like it'll give it a lot of meaning. So yeah, I would end with that. And yeah, you can find me at alifedesign.org or Special K Coaching on Instagram.
Very good. Hey, Jonathan, I'm remembering that phrase. Before enlightenment, I used to carry water and gather wood. And after enlightenment, I carry water and gather wood. You know, that there's a component, even if you are experiencing awakening, that you still eat and you still breathe and you still need a shower and whatever. Some of those daily activities go on, even as you're beginning to take on the new framework of your understanding of new truths that have been revealed. So it can be a balance to figure out, okay, I do still have to pay bills right now. I do still have to eat food right now, and sunlight is still good for me. So adjusting with those truths, kind of integrating them into life you've been leading is a process, and people should give themselves grace as they navigate that process, integrating those new truths. So, final thoughts from you, Jonathan, and how people get a hold of you.
Yes, it is important to integrate the new truths. For example, to what Brian was saying, it's it's true. Something practical for humans. To whoever is watching this, something practical that it's truth. It is on these times. You must remember that a truth is you have to learn how to unlearn what you have learned and then relearn. If
Yes.
you do not do that as you are watching this, you're going to have a very hard time as a human going forward in the future. You're going to get eliminated, and that's the truth. It's harsh, but you don't want that. So just take action, do what I just told you to do, and you will be fine. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that is the truth that I was.
How do we find you, Jonathan?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me at alivedesign.org, also Jonathan R. Coaching on Instagram, and Jonathan R. Coaching at gmail.com as well.
Very good. We'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. This has been a fun discussion of truth, and all of us are on a truth journey. You know, I saw a meme, I didn't include it, but it said, growth can be hard, but we still get to love people along the way. So
Yeah.
while you go through your growth, while you have your resilience to your experiences, you can still love people along the way. So I enjoyed our discussion today. Thanks everyone who's been with us. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.